with Beard. Welcome, podcast kittens. It's Cathy Cat.
Hi, Ladybeard, coming at you with another breathtaking episode of
Cat with Beard.
How are you, young lady?
I am wonderful. Remember that Ladybeard episode, which was like, put down the potato chips, pick up your life?
I certainly do.
Yes. So I was heavily inspired by you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I stopped currently I am on a no sugar challenge.
Oh, good.
So for 40 nights and 40 days, I'm on the no sugar challenge, and hopefully afterwards I will. Yeah.
Good. That's wonderful news. Congratulations.
Yes, and so I've been taking in advice. I was been listening for my advice, and I heard like no sugar chocolate and blueberries.
Blueberries,
a thing. Any other advice you can give for someone who's trying to stay away from sugar? Because I have a very sugar diet. I've been getting so many concerned messages from my fans because I consume crazy amounts of sugar.
Really?
So yeah, this is like one of my starting days here is trying not to eat sugar.
So. Well, whatever you do when you're trying to have a new behavior, you need try to get rid of an old behavior, you need to replace it with a new behavior. So if you're, for instance, if you're used to eating chocolate, you replace it with like, no sugar chocolate or some kind of substitution. And then later, if you then get used to that, then you can wean off the substitution, you know what I'm saying? So blueberries are very good because they're they're very they taste sweet somewhat.
Yes.
But they're really not going to do very much damage from a sugar perspective. So they're very helpful.
Awesome.
Dried fruit contains a lot of sugar, so be careful with that.
Okay.
Yeah, tropical fruits and things contain a lot of sugar. Blueberries are very good. Blueberries are a good replacement. It's a bit much to replace sugar with vegetables, but you can try that if that works for you. Yeah, it's substitution. That's the key.
Yeah, and that actually leads us into our today's topic of like food, healthy diets and stuff.
Health!
Yes!
Health! The Japanese just won't die. That's something in their reputation. They live to be the oldest living race on Earth. Yeah,
They live the longest here, and we want to find out why. We've got tons of little information of maybe how you can try and live longer and why the Japanese might be living longer. We don't have a definitive yes or no, but there's a couple of little key points to take away from this episode.
I'm not sure how much this was a bad translation, but you know how in Japan there's just a myriad of old people, and then we have this this demographic problem where there's not enough young people to support the elderly population.
Yes, that's a big problem.
It's a big problem. I heard that the Minister for Health or something, at some point he publicly said, "I urge elderly Japanese citizens to hurry up and die."
That was controversial. I'm sure they had to say something about that.
Maybe it could have been, a mistranslation or something, but in a lot of Western, people who talk about demographics and this kind of stuff, they're like, he told the old to hurry up and die. So why won't the old in Japan just die?
It is a chokore shakai, which is called not an aging society. Japan has a super aging society, which means at this point in time, there are more old people than there are new people. And there's less offspring getting made to support the old people, which might change the whole system on which, for example, the retirement system here is built in Japan, or like the pension. So right now, that's actually a big problem. But for the person who's living very long and healthy, it's not so much of a problem. We want to find out why they live so long and still healthy.
Why do they live so long? Let's find out. Oldest livers in the world, by the way. Next, we got South Korea coming in after that. Spain. The French coming in after that.
France.
Spain, Germany. You guys are up there doing quite well.
Australia, you're doing pretty well too.
We're
Canada.
after that as well. So now we have all the, the Anglo countries and so forth.
Well, the UK, USA after that.
And we keep going down into progressively less healthy countries after that.
But it seems like Japan is just by far
killing it.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Living it.
Tell you what.
Living it. By far.
Killing is an ironic way to describe success in this field. They're living it.
Outliving us all.
Outliving us all.
Outliving us all. Now, the WA, we have another map. Can we put that on the screen on YouTube? So we have another map, and then you can see different prefectures and a number attached to it, with the average lifespan is broken down even by prefectures, and the longest life expectancies are around 80.88 80.8, and that's in Nagano. 80.88. And I think that's the longest one.
Isn't it interesting that Nagano should be the oldest livers? Yeah, Nagano is kind of, they've got a lot of factories and whatnot there, don't they?
I expected it maybe more actually to be towards Aomori and that kind of like, a little bit more, lots of nature, beautiful nature, that kind of thing. Aomori is actually the lowest at 77.28, which is still pretty high. But
still pretty good, but yeah, Aomori, who would have thought they have those magical alien apples? But still, it's not enough to keep everyone alive.
Apparently not.
Well, actually, pretty is, but anyway.
But if you think that is the average, like Japan has some of the oldest living people in the world. And if you are actually, then you get like, if there are a certain age, I think people come around your house and congratulate you on living so long.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, so that is quite a thing. But I think it also leads to a couple of other things that sometimes there is no villages in Japan where it's literally just old people living there. Yeah. So that's going to be a problem. It is a problem now, and it will probably be more a problem in the future because the new people have no place to thrive and work in those areas. So it's a plus and a minus there, I'd say.
They're doing a lot of government programs trying to encourage young people to move to those villages.
I actually filmed one on NHK where they got these old Japanese houses, minkan, and they build it up inside to be an editing studio.
Really?
You can edit anywhere in the world, right? So you just get that old house, they build it up nicely, people have their offices there, they'd walk around barefoot because it's the countryside.
Really?
It's young people, they then bring their families, and they kind of bring a new life in those villages that are kind of getting...
the government will reform a house for you?
I think depending on where you go, sometimes those houses are cheaper, sometimes relocation is subsidized, sometimes in some prefectures, not even too far from Tokyo, if you are a Japanese family and you want to move there, sometimes they gave you houses incredibly cheap as well. So if you could apply as a Japanese family living, for example, in, I think, Okutama is the area near Tokyo, and you could apply to live there if you could prove that you're a Japanese family who could live and work from there, you might get a house for almost free.
Wow.
Because there's a lot of houses that are empty at that point in time in some areas. But mentioning that Okutama is pretty, and I hope I got the right place. It's Okutama, right?
How far away is Okutama?
Okutama is like, it's a bit harder to reach by train. I think it's like within the 1-2 hour range. Okay. It is suddenly forests and mountains. I've been there once in a cafe. It's literally like you think it is not Tokyo, but it still counts as Tokyo.
Oh, really?
Yep.
It's still in the...
Okutama.
Really? Okutama?
Yeah, it's still a part of Tokyo that again has a lot of, had a lot of vacant houses, and they came up with the idea of saying, okay, we make an incentive to get families here to live here and raise their kids because we want to populate this part of Tokyo as well. So Tokyo is not all just skyscrapers. Don't forget, it's a prefecture that is actually a lot bigger than just the city itself. And there are areas with literally mountain and just forest and in which the houses are cheap. Yeah. If you can prove you're a Japanese family, you might have a great chance there.
So, all right. So, why? Why is it that Japanese people live to be such a ripe old age, more so than the rest of us? How can this be, Cathy Cat?
There's different reasons. First of all, a lot of people say the food. I think that's number one, that people say that the food is very healthy. Japanese food is very healthy. You have a lot of less fat in the Japanese food. Like, it's less. There are still things that are fried, don't get me wrong. Karaage, fried chicken, tasty stuff. Fried, deep fried, tempura. Heavy fried food. There's a lot of fried foods, but you don't have them as commonly or as often. And if you have certain type of fats, I think Japanese people tend to balance it out a lot.
I see, really.
So, and also the idea, I think the boom of fast food is still fairly recent. Ordering pizza here is fairly recent.
Oh, really?
And I did an interview here in Harajuku, and I kid you not, young people were like, oh, I've never ever eaten an entire pizza by myself. I would never ever do that.
Really?
Yeah, so people, as a family, will maybe order in a big pizza, and then they split it. You're nodding over there in the studio.
Really?
The family will order in a big pizza, and everyone has a slice of pizza, but with that, you have salad, you still have fish, you have a bit of rice. So you don't just come and eat an entire pizza to yourself. You kind of share it out. So the idea of what we do in the West of just ordering us pizza and eating the pizza. There just people don't generally do that. And I had a couple of girls who said like, well, if I want to have like half a pizza, I'll try not to eat before and after having half a pizza just to balance out. So they're very, very calorie intake conscious.
that interesting?
So I think there's a less of a tolerance around like heavy carbs, heavy calories in that way. If it's pizza or burgers, people seem to be very like, ooh, if I eat that, I have to kind of stop eating something else. So they seem to balance it a little bit.
That's very interesting. I find in the Western world, in Australia, I suppose I should probably say, seems to be a lot of kind of public focus on healthy eating and a lot of government campaigns about healthy eating, a lot of encouraging people. We used to have a program in Australia, 2 and 5, which was every day you should eat 2 serves of fruit and 5 serves of vegetables, right? So there's all this encouragement for people to eat healthy. But then in Japan, it seems like there's far less kind of social emphasis on it. And somehow people just eat healthier. It's just the standard diet is far, far healthier.
Yeah, and that's just a random theory I'm putting out there or just a random question. Could it also be that is because there is such a pressure to be skinny here in Japan as well?
Well, I mean, there's pressure to be skinny elsewhere as well.
Everywhere, but it's like the like you have to kind of, everyone else is that kind of body weight. So it's really, really rare to see a big Japanese person on the train, that kind of thing. So it seems to be there is more focus on like being careful of your weight. A lot of my friends that were, for example, in the UK who were Japanese, they would gain some weight eating the food in the British food. But when they went back, they got so much pressure from their families and friends that they then started losing a lot of weight and tried to put effort into losing weight.
Really?
Because it's not that body weight was normal in the UK, but in Japan, the same body weight would be seen as fat.
Yeah.
So they forced themselves to lose that weight because it was acceptable in the UK. It wasn't accepted in Japan. It's a little bit stricter.
I have another theory as well. We're getting a little bit off topic, but I have another theory. I think I can only really speak for Australia, but I feel like in Australia, a lot of the food is kind of getting pumped up with a lot of additives and whatnot. And so therefore, even if you are eating something clean, like just a chicken breast or something, I feel like before the chicken even made it to your plate, they pumped that chicken up with, maybe growth hormones and things like that. Or a lot of water. I hear they pump meat up with a lot of water so that it expands and so forth. So I got a feeling maybe in the Western world, we're just, helping our food along and we're kind of modifying and so forth. Maybe Japan, that's not really happening to the same extent.
It seems also there's a less meat ratio compared to other things. In Japan, it's more heavily focused on seafood. And seafood generally tends to be healthier.
Pretty good,
for you.
that's right.
When the West is like, oh, yeah, like big steak, a lot of meat. Like it's a good thing to have that on your plate. And I learned that from my family, like a big schnitzel on the plate. It's a good thing. You have a huge schnitzel and some fried fries, but it's beautiful.
It should.
Yeah, and like the size of meat you can buy easily in the West. Like you can get like a huge schnitzel, fried cutlet. You can get for like a really good price. Well, in Japan, meat of the same size would be you could purchase. That's too expensive.
Yeah. When I go to restaurants and whatnot, I need to order like 4 meals to get the equivalent of 1 Aussie meal. My goodness. So
I think it's like we have less fat, we have less heavy meats and things that stay a lot, less fast food. Or like there is a lot of fast food, but people seem to be really careful of if I have fast food on this way, I try not to eat it on the next day. At least the ladies seem to be very, very strict about that. I see a couple of guys who go every time to a ramen restaurant, but also there's a lot of vegetables. And there seems to be a trend around seasonal vegetables as well. And
yes.
And the craziest thing, and I think you will probably not get to taste that if you don't live with a Japanese host family, but when I was living with a Japanese host family, there would be a season when they would come up with mountain vegetables.
Right,
and that'd be like little fawns that you could pluck on the way while you were hiking. And it's so stuff that maybe our grandparents had to eat when there wasn't enough food. And then people stopped eating it because it's just not become a popular food. Fawns and little weeds.
Fawns?
Like, what do you call those? Ferns?
I see.
Sorry. Ferns, not fawns. Ferns, like on the roadside, they would like take that on trips and eat that. And it's just like, wow, there's so much variety in the type of food they eat as well.
That's very interesting.
I heard though, and I heard that again and again and again. So I'm not a doctor, I don't know, but I heard that because Japanese people had to eat so many like little things that they found on the paths and like little greens and stuff, that their intestine is a little bit longer than the average Western person, and so they can split up certain things that our stomachs might not be able to split up.
Is that right? Well,
I heard that. Please let me know in the comments if you heard that too.
The old large intestine blowing my mind with large facts. Oh my goodness.
And I think Japanese people in general, they're big foodies. They
really are. And there's a kind of an interesting respect and reverence for food in Japan, which is an interesting thing. When you go to the buffet in Japan, there's a sign at your table saying, do not take more food than you're going to eat. Which culturally, in our culture, it's like you load up your plate with as much food as it could possibly handle, then you eat some of it, and then you go get a new one. But in Japan, if you leave food uneaten, unless something's happened to it, unless something's wrong with it, people get very upset with you.
Yeah,
they don't like food waste.
Yeah, don't waste food.
They don't like food
waste.
Which
is interesting because there's such a variety, right, in the different types, fried, baked, steamed. Like they prepare it in many ways, and it seems also that the thought of like this very specific food, like for example, you turn on the TV. Sorry, I'm getting like a bit off track here. You turn on the TV at a certain time, and everything is about food. In Japan, you turn on the TV, and everything will be about food. It's usually around dinner time when everyone is eating. All you see on TV is food. Japanese people are big foodies, and if there's something that's good, someone will go like, "Ooh, let me make this perfect," and then they perfect that dish to as much as they can perfect it.
When I first got here, a lot of my fans were really interested to see photos and videos and whatnot of my diet because I don't think of it in the same way as them. I'm just eating my boring diet food. It's nothing of note. It's the boringest food you could possibly eat. Boringest isn't a word. It's the most boring food you could possibly eat. And everyone was like, oh! They were just amazed by it because it was so different from the immaculately prepared and visually spectacular meals that everyone in Japan always eats.
Yeah, it seems also that the portions in Japan are smaller too,
Very
right?
small. Yeah.
You said like immaculately prepared, there's usually like tiny plates and there's like 1, 2, or 3 vegetables on that one, and then there's another tiny plate with a little bit of meat. Like there's lots and lots of little dishes with lots and lots of little things instead of like one big plate with a big schnitzel.
Yeah.
That's again a different thing. So you kind of feel like you have to finish that plate because there's a big schnitzel on it. But with the other one, you don't realize you're actually eating less. Because you have it so nicely spaced out as well.
But that's also part of Western culture as well. As children, we're raised to eat everything on our plate.
Oh yeah, we have to.
Yeah, very important, right?
But I also heard, and that's a recent theory, is that if you eat less food intake, that also helps you live longer because you don't put all that stress,
all that energy into processing food,
you don't constantly have to churn heavy foods. You make it lighter on your system, and then your system can take care of other things. So that's probably also part of it because Japanese people seem to believe in hara hachibunme.
What's that?
Hara hachibunme means you only eat 80%. You don't eat until you're full. You don't eat until you're bursting full. You eat 80%, which means you could still eat a little bit, but you're stopping yourself.
Is that right? I haven't heard that before. Is that right?
Yep, we have some nodding over there. We have a Japanese person to prove that.
Just quickly, man, I'm getting so hungry. This episode's killing me.
So hungry. Oh my gosh.
But a lot of salt commonly in Japanese food, though. We can't overlook that.
I think the soy. There's a lot of soy. The saltiness from the soy is quite in a lot of dishes. It's interesting because some people say Japanese food is so healthy, but I think in the end it depends on what do you choose to eat. If you eat good ramen every day, you're still gonna gain some weight.
Yeah, you porch up a little bit.
Yeah. So, but sometimes it's just the sizing. I find, like, if you get a slab of cake in Germany, it's big. It's almost half of your face size, right? Yeah. But in Japan, you get like a slab of cake.
A tiny little square.
Oh, it's a little triangle. Oh, so tasty. But it's a tasty triangle. They put so much effort into every layer. It's been thought through. There's like maybe something in the middle to surprise you. So instead of like one big thing that you just eat to feel like full and overly full, it's like, ooh, I treated myself to this nice little
it's like the size of a thumb, isn't it? It had a sweet little thumb. Vegetarian in Japan. Vegetarian and veganism. Are these things that are a big deal in Japan?
I find it interesting because you would think vegetarian and vegan is easy in Japan, but it's not necessarily that easy. A friend of mine is vegetarian, and I tried to take her to like a top floor. I think it was Lumine or something, one of those big floors with like loads of restaurants next to each other. Then we were just like, do you have anything vegetarian there? And if she was pescatarian, meaning she was allowed seafood, perfect. As a pescatarian, Japan is your oyster. Really? Pun intended, I guess. But as a vegetarian, Japan is harder because there's generally some kind of fish extract in the soup, in the broth, in the tomato, those 5 little flavorings that Japanese people use. There's a lot of seafood in that. So if you can't deal with seafood, then it's a bit tough. Vegan is the step harder because in Japan, a lot of people see meat as a good thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Why would you not want to
Why would you ever want to not have meat?
Meat is like, you know, because it came a bit later, that kind of meat trend came to Japan later and seafood was the main for so long. It's like a good thing. It's like a special thing. You celebrate it. Why would you turn it down? That, like, we have no more vegans trying to, like, show, like, protest a little bit or just raise awareness. There's now more vegan restaurants on, what is it? Something Happy Cow is the name of the app. You can find vegan restaurants and vegetarian restaurants. So there are places. And I think there's more and more places now that focus on that, but they're a bit late compared to other places.
I don't know of Happy Cow. Those of you who are vegetarians or vegans in Japan, Happy Cow is the place to go.
That is the app here.
I was on a largely vegan diet when I first got here.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, if you went out to restaurants or anything, it was very limited in anything that I could eat.
Yeah.
Little side salads and that kind of thing was really all that was available.
My friend called it surprise meat. She would order a salad and it looked totally fine. It wouldn't even say meat on it. And then there would be bacon on it. And she's like, that is not a vegetarian salad. And they're like, oh, just take it off.
Yeah, of course.
And she's like, that's not the point.
Nah.
So there's still a little bit of work to do. What healthy foods would you recommend in Japan?
Oh, dear me. I like the, what's it called? Is it mushi moyashi? The white stringy thingamajig?
Moyashi, bamboo sprouts.
I'm very pro moyashi. They give it to you as a side dish when you eat things. But I can mung out on big old plates of moyashi. I love it.
Moyashi is actually also known as that one vegetable that is so cheap that if you, for whatever reason, have overspent your money on UFO catcher or whatever, you go on the moyashi diet. Because that's like whatever, like 15 cents or 20 cents or something silly like that. It's so cheap. You get a little pouch of it.
It's also delicious. It's also delicious and nutritious. How about you, Cathy Cat? What do you reckon?
Healthy thing. I think a lot of, if you look closer, a lot of teishoku places are good. Teishoku is like a lunch meal, and you get usually a salad. You get like something that's pickled, and pickles again are really good for you. And then you get maybe a steamed fish or like a boiled fish or something with it. And then you have your bowl of rice and a miso soup, right? Okay, soy is not good for everyone. If you can't do soy, then leave the miso soup where it is. Rice-wise, you can ask the chef and say, hey, can I only have half of it if you don't want to eat too much rice? And then they make a smaller portion for you. And then you have, I'm so hungry. Then you have salad and you have all those wonderful things on the plate. And yeah, I think that's fairly healthy.
It is interesting to me how there's normally the rice served with more or less every meal. That's a big old bowl of starchy carbohydrates.
Yeah.
But everyone's munging away and remaining pretty slender.
Yeah, that's one of the things. There seems to be white rice is still a very popular thing, but recently, like leaving a little bit of the outside. You know, the white rice only gets white because you kind of what's the word for it? You kind of polish it.
Yes.
So less polished rice is seemed to be much healthier for you,
good.
and the less you polish it and have a little bit of brown still on it, it's still seen as a very healthy thing. So older people tend to eat that to live longer.
Living longer.
Yeah, it's going more towards diet here right now, but yes.
But look. Something we can't ignore, which is a little bit, counterintuitive, I suppose. The Japanese do love a good drink.
Yeah.
They love a drink.
Sake. This is the country of sake, where sake is born. It is sweet. It is, again, made out of, rice most of the time, so quite heavy stuff.
This is the land of strong zero.
Oh, yeah, everyone loves strong zero. That's based on what it's chewed.
Strong Zero is an alcoholic beverage you can get at the convenience store, and it's very affordable. It's like $1.50 a can or something.
Alcohol pop.
Yeah, it's like an alcohol pop, and everyone's working so hard. They keep incrementally increasing the alcohol content. When I first got here, it was like 5%. Now it's up at 9 or something.
Oh, the Strong Zero is getting stronger every couple of
stronger. But people are bashing them on the way home from work just to get through the day.
You see that a lot. I think it is surprising. I think the generation who's now old had a very different life than the generation who's coming now, because the kind of work and pressure and kind of like grind of work has changed a lot. So I the high life expectancy you might be able to deal with on the countryside, but if you're full on a salaryman working in Tokyo, having like 3 hours of sleep every night, I think that is gonna chuck away on your life expectancy and then the amount of alcohol you're drinking. So alcohol comes in. We have a map here as well. You can see the colder it gets, it seems the more people drink in general.
Well, fair enough.
That seems to be a thing all over the world. You have cold winters, you need something to keep you warm.
You've got something to keep you sane as well. We already know how Ladybeard feels about the winter. You need something to get you through those frosty months.
So, for example, in Hokkaido, people drink quite a lot. Then there's a couple of other areas where they create sake or where they make sake. And it's interesting, if we go back to the map earlier, the places that are very known for their sake seem to also have a little bit less of a life expectancy. So maybe they're hitting that sake barrel a little bit too hard.
Maybe they start them too young. Maybe they put it in the mother's milk and make it to the infants.
Well, in Japan, people start drinking from 20, so they're actually...
later?
They're starting everything later.
You
right?
Germans start when you're
We Germans start from 16.
16,
so,
yeah, right.
For beer, at least, not for the heavy ones. But so that is probably in a connection as well. Another thing, since we're still at the diet thing, it really that the way mothers still look after the family, I think, have an impact on it too.
Yeah, tell me more.
Because there's still so much. You come home and there's a hand-cooked meal. There's no additives in there. There's not like this and this and that.
Okay,
there's
fair
still
enough.
a lot of like housewives who pride themselves, who 100% housewives, they don't work, who cook like these through like variety. It's not just a schnitzel on a plate. It's like usually 3 dishes. You have to have at least 3 dishes on a proper dinner table. There's a salad with it. There's something steamed. Then there's maybe something pickled. So that variety is there, and there's less additives, all the kind of stuff that you get if you purchase it from the store, the high salts, the high sugars, you get that less on a daily basis.
Do you know what else? This has just occurred to me now, but potentially less of a driving culture. And so therefore there's less temptation to, pick the kids up and be like, we'll just go through the drive-through because I can't be bothered cooking, because that culture doesn't really exist when fewer and fewer people are driving cars. And do we even have drive-thrus in Japan? Do you have drive-thru at McDonald's?
Yeah, in the countryside, actually, I see a lot. There's a lot of drive-thrus, but then it's like sushi drive-thru or something like that.
Really?
So it's a little. You have healthier fast food options. Say
That's
that it is still junk food. You can still get McDonald's, but there is generally the junk food. Even the junk food, you can opt for a healthy option. You can say, I'm gonna go and get myself some udon quickly, or I'm gonna go and get myself some sushi quickly. That's still a little bit healthier than a full-blown burger. So there's things like that, and I'm basing a lot on the host families I've met. I've seen a couple of host families, and they're very strict on, do they eat properly? Do you have the right balance? Does everyone has 3 meals during the day? So food is so important in the Japanese culture. People care a lot about eating good food, healthy food, and such. Like at least the host families I've been with, and I must say, one of my Japanese host families, we went to one of those big pool areas.
Big pool
like big
areas?
like pool, like a pool, like a pool, like an amusement pool.
Oh, all right. Okay.
So, and I kid you not, from the back view of them, of my host mom and my host dad, when they were just standing there, I thought they were a bunch of teenagers standing there. Their whole body and their physique, they were just so lean because they eat so healthy and they move when they can. That from the back view, there wasn't the general muffin roll or anything there, which really surprised me.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I want to be like that when I grow old.
Wow.
But again, it's a lot of really being strict with your diet, and the old people here in Japan have a bit thinking of, let's not cause a nuisance to the youngers.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, there's a lot of like, meiwaku kaketaku nai. So the idea is, when you get older, you have to try for your own sake, but also for the sake of your family, to stay healthy.
Oh, really?
Because if
I
you
wasn't aware
hit
of
that alcohol and you hit that junk food, you're not going to be healthy, and you're going to cause a lot of problems for you.
Of course, having
your
heart
kids.
attacks and making it difficult for the oh, right. I didn't know about that, really.
And that's why there's a lot of programs here in Japan that keeps the old people happy in the way of hiking, for example.
I see.
You can go inside. Where was that? My host family took me there once. Higambana. There's like a special red flower that blooms somewhere all the way in Chichibu. I remember.
right.
In Chichibu. And the host family took us there, me and the other host boy, and we were all there just walking around until we finally reached the flowers, walked around the flowers, took some pictures, walked back. It was like a 2-3 hour hike. It was a long hike. But those old people, they are fitter than I am. They are fitter than they were running away. They were all like chatting away. They were having a really great time. And it gives them social contact.
Yes.
A lot of people do it in groups, which means they're emotionally happier. And then it gives them physical activities. So they move their bodies to make sure those legs stay healthy and strong. And so that kind of keeps, I think it's one of the things that keeps the older generation so happy here is the regular hiking things. Most of them are for free. You arrive at that station somewhere really far in the mountains and then you get a free map. You get a free sticker. And then you do your hike, you take your pictures, you come back, and then you get a little treat for having completed your hike. And so pretty much for free, or you just pay like, well, I don't know, $5 or something.
That's quite amazing. Yeah, the hike factor, actually, thinking about it, since Japan has a lot of hills, mountains and so forth, think about the hike factor could actually have something to do with the longevity too, because it's proven that leg strength is directly correlated with longevity, because as you get older, if you have weak legs, it means if you fall over, you can't catch yourself. So your legs need to be strong enough that you can catch yourself when you fall over. So apparently there's a direct correlation with that. And I know of this physicist who tries to give elderly people exercises that will strengthen their legs and keep their legs, healthy and so forth.
So diet, less consumption of smoke, like alcohol and cigarettes, and also movement, just walking. It's as simple as a walk.
But we haven't spoken about the cigarettes yet. The Japanese love a good puff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they love a puff.
It's not as bad as Germany, I find. There's a couple of, like, also, especially in Tokyo, I feel, there's not so many areas where you can openly smoke.
Okay.
You have to go into, like, smoking compartments or smoking cafes or places where you're allowed to smoke, but on the streets you don't see people smoke as much. So you think they smoke a lot because I think culturally for you guys in Australia don't really smoke that much.
No, I think there's a lot of smokers in Australia, but there's so much government pressure to stop people smoking. I don't think it's really worked. Cigarettes cost a fortune. And there's all kinds of laws, like you can't have like logos on cigarette packets and so forth. In Australia, they did this campaign where they did things like all the negative effects of smoking. They started putting photos of that.
Oh, they're doing that in Germany too. It's so gross. Really? Oh, it's traumatizing. You just walk past the aisle with the cigarettes and it has like literally like real photos of like a lung that's been like diseased, and I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, that kind of thing. They're putting that on cigarettes. It's not working in Australia. I think the rate of smoking is going up.
Oh no, people actually put that in nice little sleeves so you don't have to see it.
Do they really?
Yeah, so people do that in Germany. It's like a nice little cigarette sleeve and you don't have to see it.
That's a business idea, isn't it? Cigarette sleeve, so you don't have to see the lung.
Yeah, or you just have like an old pack and you just transfer it into the new pack that doesn't have those gross pictures on anymore.
But I feel like in Australia, despite the fact there's been a lot of government push to get people off the smokes, there's still plenty of smoking. But we have very strict laws about where you can and can't smoke.
I think that helps a lot. Those laws in Japan, there's a big culture of group harmony, and you're not trying to cause a nuisance and pain to others, even if they're strangers. And there was like a big poster campaign where they just kept saying, "Ooh, I tried to avoid the smoking person, but the smoke still came to me." Or like a lot of like little things of like, "Ooh, my child, and I didn't want them to smoke that." Like there's a lot of like guilt tripping always into please don't smoke outside of the areas where you're allowed to smoke.
That's interesting. I haven't seen that. Really.
Yeah, so it appeals to people's morals a lot, and that seems to be working at least in Tokyo for a lot of people.
But okay, well I guess the smoke factor, I guess it's not stopping them live to be really, really old, is it? Whatever they're doing with the smokes, it's keeping them alive.
Less at least definitely than in Germany, but the medical system in Japan is also pretty good. There's a thing you have to be part of at least if your company doesn't give you insurance, you should be part of national health insurance. Everyone has to be part of national health insurance at least, or some sort of insurance. We foreigners have to. There's no way we can go around insurance, and it's actually pretty cheap. Like I think they take up 60%, depending on which insurance you have. I think around 60% the government pays, and you pay only 20% if you go into a hospital. So you pay your generally monthly or 2 monthly amount, and then once you go to the hospital, yes, you have to pay every time you go in, which is weird for a German like me. Usually when you go into the doctors, it doesn't cost anything. But if you think about, it's only a certain percentage of what actually the real amount would be. So you kind of don't feel so worried about going to the doctor.
But then also, how much you pay, like that total that you're only paying a percentage of, that total is then based on your income. So if you're a low income earner, you still can get treatment because it's going to be like, 60% of a much smaller number as opposed to higher income earners that have to pay more. A friend of mine had his anterior cruciate ligament reconstructed in Japan, which is a massive surgery, and it cost him like $80 or something because he was such a low income earner that the health system covered it all for him.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's like looking after the people who
are gonna get
need
sick.
the help.
That's right.
Interesting is also that apparently after a certain age in Japan, your health insurance gets even cheaper. Well, you see a lot of people, generally old people, will have to go to the doctor more often. It is like with the car. The older the car gets, the more you have to kind of, look after. So
I feel like elderly people oftentimes go to the doctor just to hang out. Just to have
everyone's
nice
nodding
time.
over there. This is probably the same thing in Germany.
Every time I go to the hospital, I'm like, wow, these guys are just chilling here.
Just hanging out, having
a little
chat.
picnic they've organized.
But one thing I broke into earlier, which I think will probably lower the life expectancy for people in the big cities from here onwards, and especially in our generation, your generation, everyone's thinking coming to Japan, is the amount of stress that people go through.
The stress is remarkable.
It is.
For the majority of working Japanese people. Even if you're not working, maybe you think it's equally stressful to not work in Japan because there's this, why aren't you working?
Yeah, it's like a lot of work, a lot of pressure, and it seems to be seen as a good thing if you're going home with the very last train home. Or like working even through the night, that kind of stuff. There's so many energy drinks if you go to the convenience store that are there to like buff you up so you can like keep working for another day. You know that anime, we had this episode here with anime creators who sometimes will just not sleep and shower for days and sleep on the floor in the office so they can hand in things on time. That's gonna chip down on people's life expectancy.
You're telling me the lack of sleep and the lack of, leisure time and the lack of decompression. Yep. That won't be great for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a different, like, the word for a death through work is called karoshi, and that was built in Japan. So the death through work, working yourself to death, is not an uncommon thing in Japan. No. They're trying to have less companies be horrible to their workers and have them actually die at work or because of overwork, but it's still a big problem. And also the recent factors here is like depression of overwork. So people sometimes just get like mentally, so because of all that pressure and that high work, people do get depression. And that's, I think, factors that in a way is kind of new to Japan. It seemed like a good thing to work, but I heard about a lot of my friends whose, for example, husband was working so hard that he just got himself into a permanent rut. So that kind of thing is going to chip down on people's life expectancy from here onwards. So that's a tricky one. I think Japan is a very stressful society. Time seems to be running here a lot faster here, especially in Tokyo. Can't speak for the countryside. I'm sure the countryside life is a little bit more relaxed. But Tokyo is high pressure.
Well, I guess the countryside, though, if you're something like a farmer, then it's just a different kind of stress, isn't it? Now it's the stress of, well, a typhoon took out half the cucumbers. I wonder how we're gonna make enough money this year. I think it's just a different kind of stress potentially.
Yeah, but if you think about a wonderful director of the program, how many hours do you sleep a night? Like what, 4?
Yeah, this man.
3? Maybe 5?
5.
But today you slept 3. I mean,
we
high pressure.
We finished recording at midnight, and he's like, "Well, I'm just going to take a nap because I got to be up again at 4 a.m." We're like, "What?"
That is like like the amount of hard work and little amount of sleep and little downtime. That is something that the current generation is probably struggling a little bit more with. So I'm not sure if we're all going to get to those high expectations.
I wonder if
we're all working these kind of hours.
These numbers might start coming down. I wonder. Another thing we don't have on the script, but probably not a fun thing to talk about, but what we should talk about is the suicide as well, because there's also plenty of suicide that goes on.
I think that ties in with the hard work and the high pressure.
Yeah, I think so too.
There is still a lot of thinking that if you go ishidemo 3 nen or something, if you're sitting on a stone, you have to at least sit there for 3 years.
What?
Yeah, it's the saying, which means even if it's a terrible company, you should be with that company for at least 3 years.
Is that right?
Yes, because in Japan, the idea is that you become a seishain, you become part of that company, they become your new family, and you're not supposed to leave them. If as a headhunter, they will just go and see, you changed. Why did you change jobs? Well, in the West, it's a good thing. You change jobs, you get lots of experience, you work here, there, and there, perfect. But in Japan, it's not a good, why did you change jobs? So some people pressure themselves to work in a job or an environment or under a boss that they hate. And they think there's no way out of here. And some people don't even give themselves 3 years. They just go like, this is my life from now on. And I have to listen to that boss shout me down every day. Like, it's just horrible. The pressure is high. I never get home. I don't eat properly. I don't sleep properly. And then it goes into that negative cycle of it getting to you physically and it gets to you mentally. And that is a really big problem in Japan. I think psychologically wise, there's still something that Japan can improve on. If you go to a psychologist here in Japan, from what I've heard, they're very expensive and they're not part, or many things are not part yet of health insurance. So it seems to be like,
oh, really?
So if you want to, like, if you have your first appointment, you pay about like $500 up to $400, $300, $400, $500 to speak with someone. Well, getting medicines apparently is a little bit cheaper than that, but I don't know the particulars. I just from stuff I've heard.
Wow.
It's still a bit harder to get access to that because it's seen as such a good thing to work hard. Right. It's such a good thing to not sleep. It's such a good thing to dedicate your life completely to work that it's almost a bit of a taboo to speak up about it and say, hey, they work me to the bone. So that's why there's a lot of companies that are called buraku. Like, it's the darkness of like dark or black companies that overwork their workers, and people find it hard to speak up about that. So that's going to chuck away a little bit at the life expectancy. But the generation that is currently old, they're really they're getting full pension right now because they still had that.
Living
That's
their
the boomers
best
right now.
lives. Living their best lives.
They're having their meets. Hey, they're so busy. They're like, on this day I go and I do art. On this day I have a playing around. On this day I'm going to go travel somewhere. On this day they're doing they're
a great time.
living it.
That is the generation as well that rebuilt Japan after the war.
And they enjoy what is called their second life. Yeah. So the first life is what you do, you go, you do all company, and then you raise the kids and you work hard. But then once you retire, that's your second life. And it is hiking and Scrabbles and maybe traveling the world. And because they're physically still so healthy, they do all that walking and stuff, they can do all of that. So it's not just, I'm just going to sit in front of the TV all day. Probably some do that as well. But there's a lot of very, very active. I think those pensioners, probably half of them are fitter than I am. And I kid you not. I was climbing Mount Fuji with my host mom, and she was already over 60. And she had more energy than I did.
Really?
So, sorry. It's just amazing how fit they keep, and they actually take pride in staying fit.
That's impressive. You climbed Fuji, though. Good job, man.
Thank you. But she climbed it with me 3 times.
Oh, well, good job, Mum. You did well. You're triple Fuji climbing, Mum.
It's amazing. They just don't, just keep fit, eat healthy, live forever.
That's a Cathy Cat quote, isn't it?
Keep fit, eat healthy,
live forever. I love it. Well, should we wrap this bad boy up? Are we at time?
Let's do that.
So, do we have a conclusion? The Japanese are very old because they eat well, they keep fit, they live forever.
I think if you think about it, if you can reduce your alcohol and your tobacco, that's what the doctors say. That's a good thing. If you can reduce your stress, which a lot of people here cannot do, it would also be a good thing.
Healthy up that diet, I suppose.
Healthy
Get on the
diet.
Japanese diet, I guess.
Smaller portions.
Smaller portions.
Less amount of food. Like, even though it feels great to eat till you're full, just stay at 80%.
The pescatarian factor. Stick in some
seafood.
Fish. The old chicken of the sea.
Yeah, sea chicken, tuna, the sea chicken. And then it's probably also the moving factor. Sorry, I need to put this in there. Pokemon Go is, in Japan, at this point in time, majorly played by the older generation.
Is it really?
Because they're walking around so much, and it gives them an incentive to walk a little bit further and maybe catch that Pokemon over there.
Is that true?
So it got
That's
really quickly very, very, very uncool to play Pokemon Go in Japan because the older generation took that game over, and they're now everywhere. You go to a Pokemon Go event, there's more older people than younger people.
That's
because
so funny.
they have like the highest stats because they're walking so much and collecting all those Pokemon.
Really?
Yeah. So stay super fit. Seriously, you don't even have to lift weights. It's in the walking. I think a lot of it is in the walking for the older generation.
You can lift weights if you want to, though. I would encourage that.
Yeah, if you can't do it.
Let's wrap this bad boy up.
All
Cathy
right.
Cat, where are you on the internet?
Cathy Cat _TV. You keep saying underbar. It's so embarrassing. Cathy Cat _TV on Instagram, on Twitter, on Twitch, on YouTube. You can find me. And hey, also on NHK World, Japan Railway Journal is a program I do there as well. How about you, Ladybeard?
At Ladybeard _Japan on the internet, and my group Babybeard at Babybeard _Japan. It's been a pleasure, Cathy Cat.
It's been a pleasure.
Congratulations to the old of Japan for keeping kicking. And I wish all of you a long, happy, healthy life as well.
Exactly. And I'll see you soon on the next episode of
Cat with Beard. Goodbye.
Bye. Live long and prosperous.
Stay healthy.